So with the Air Canada tentative agreement in mind, let's get in touch now with, of course, CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid, to talk more about this. Of course, this relates to the federal government in particular, Scott, but Air Canada and the flight attendants appear to have reached a deal here. This is kind of huge because yesterday we were talking about how the federal government really hadn't been too in front of this one.
Mm-hmm. And they weren't yesterday again. I mean, there was a slight comment from the Prime Minister saying urge parties to get together. I don't think necessarily because of that comment, but clearly they did get together. There's some vindication for the federal government in last night's breakthrough, insofar as it does appear as though it came thanks to the arbitrator, which was imposed by the federal government. And it appears as though the union found the direction of the arbitrator favorable. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this breakthrough today. But here's where I think the next political challenge in this, because this is frontline stuff. You know, we can talk about ballot box strategies and so on and so forth. And when people can't get to where they're going, when they can't get somebody on the phone to tell them what's going to happen to my $1,500 seat, they get mad and they find a neck to wring, and government becomes that neck. And so the next lever, I think, in this discussion politically is going to be, how does Air Canada clean up the mess? How do they deal with all those people that Courtney's spoken to, all those heartbreaking stories of, well, I've been stranded here for 4 days. I've had to take on $10,000 of additional credit card debt that I didn't expect because I couldn't get information. I couldn't get anywhere. Was forced to suffer this. So what is the mix of credits and compensation that Air Canada will bring forward? My guess is you'll see that the federal government's watching that carefully, and they won't hesitate to speak out if they think the consumers have been treated poorly, that they're not being compensated adequately. There are these, Airline Bill of Rights and other initiatives taken at the federal level. And the federal level regulates transport, regulates air travel. So I'll be watching to see if the federal government decides and it wants to get up into Air Canada's grill, if there's a lingering sense of disaffection among travelers.
And Scott, of course, it was just a few months ago, the Competition Bureau came out and said, we need to open up competition in this country. And we heard people speaking to Courtney and some of the other reporters here at CB24 and CTV. The idea of getting more competition might, you would assume, perhaps spur on perhaps a little bit better service for passengers.
You might see that debate. It's an interesting one because, we've not really heard the Conservatives, as an example, the opposition, who are generally in favor of more free market solutions. We haven't heard them pound too heavily on this. Maybe they will. I think one of the hesitations is that once you go down the road of that policy change, it becomes a little tricky. So suddenly you get big American airlines scooping up and cutting rates on, the profitable routes from Toronto to Ottawa, or Toronto to Montreal, Vancouver to Toronto. But then what happens for all those far-flung destinations? Who's going to pay? Who's going to compete when it comes to getting people to Winnipeg or Saskatoon or Moncton? And so that becomes the challenge. So we'll see if that policy debate gets triggered. Right now, I think it's going to be squarely focused on the buck and on the traveling experience of individuals and families.
Yeah. Okay, Scott, staying with federal politics, yesterday Pierre Poilievre won his by-election in Alberta, and we were really paying attention to the margins of how much he'd win by, and it looks like it was pretty strong. He's heading back to the House of Commons to face Prime Minister Mark Carney in this fall.
The biggest non-political story that we've had, or non-story in politics that we've had. The suspense over whether Pierre Poilievre would get 80, 81, or 65%. Who cares? He's going to win the seat. He did win the seat. He won it commandingly. All those critics and naysayers, he can just sweep aside. And now here's what we get. We get Rocky 2. We get the sequel. We get a rematch between Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. We're going to see now how these two lock horns in the House of Commons, what the strategies are, how they pace and circle one another for the next number of months, couple of years. When will the next election be? We don't know. It's a minority government, so it could come at any time. But I think one of the things that's so interesting is in this rematch, Pierre Poilievre starts from behind. Remember, he started way ahead last time. He was, going to be the Prime Minister. It was inevitable. Now his approval ratings as a leader, his approval ratings for his party, they've dropped. So how does Pierre Poilievre 2.0 mount a comeback? How does he take on and ultimately, from his perspective, take down Mark Carney? We're not going to get to watch that movie.
Yeah, well, those Rocky movies are great, so I can't wait for September 15th, Scott. In the meantime, let's quickly just touch on this.
It's Rocky 3 that really makes it. It's Clubberland, right? I mean, I don't know how that...
I mean, Mr. T, Hulk Hogan, Ivan Drago, and Rocky 4. I mean, the list goes on and on. We could talk Rocky all morning, but we have to talk about Ford and Carney. Like, that relationship seems steady, both coming out complimenting each other yesterday. But what really got accomplished in that meeting where the Premier went to the Prime Minister to say, hey, we've got to either cut taxes or do something to stimulate the economy?
Yeah, the Premier's kind of talking tough that he was going to go to Ottawa and demand that all taxes everywhere be cut. The actual meeting when they came out, Premier was all, roses and kisses again. And so you might be left with the takeaway that not a lot happened. There's not a lot of news out of it, which makes me wonder what happened in the room. What do we not know? And I think one of the things to watch is over the course of the fall, as the federal government turns to this task of financing and funding these big major projects, as they call it, right? Like, are we going to build a pipeline? Are we going to rewire the electricity grid? Like these major, massive infrastructure programs that cost tens of billions of dollars. What is Ontario's hit list? What does it have? My bet is the Premier and the Prime Minister talked about Ontario's preferred major projects. What does Doug Ford want the federal government to finance in a generational way? And we didn't learn it yesterday, but my guess is we will learn it this fall. And I'm really betting that they talked about that yesterday.
Okay, can't wait for more Rocky and more drama. CTV's political commentator Scott Reid joining us live, entertaining as usual. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, Scott.